Hi, this is John, and welcome to another edition of Statistics Tell a Story. Well, Super Bowl's in 3 days, and you sure do hear a lot about the Chiefs and cheating and things along those lines. And so I wanted to talk to that today to speak to this issue at several levels. So the way I look at it is you can kind of pare it down to three different levels of cheating. There's, and I'm using the word cheat kind of in a strong sense in some of these levels. On the mildest level, there is just bias, whether it's conscious or subconscious, on the with respect to the referees. And some of them might have favorite players. They might come from cities where they have favorite teams. I think there might be a case, certainly, where you see like in baseball, it's kind of considered where a good pitcher will get the calls because the umpire thinks they should get the call on a close ball or strike. So maybe the same type of things happening here. Certainly in football, you're protecting the quarterback. Um, and I think they probably are instructed, so to speak, to do their best to protect their quarterbacks. Do they go overboard in protecting quarterbacks like Mahomes, who is, very possibly the most marketable quarterback, if not the best in football? So that's a very strong possibility, and I think those types of biases happen. There's a friend of mine. We've discussed how the Steelers have possibly gotten calls over the years, and it might be because they're America's team. Does that mean it's cheating? No, we kind of agree that it's just maybe there's just a subconsciousness that, again, on the part of the referees that goes their way. So that's one level. Can and does that happen? Probably. Yeah, they're human. The referees are human, and I think that plays into it. The second level is kind of you might call this a wink wink level where you have Roger Goodell at a meeting with the umpire with the referees, and he says something to the effect of, I want you guys to do the best you can, but I really hope the Chiefs win, something like that. And then the third level is blatant cheating. There is a gentleman, his name's Brian, I think last name Tui or something like that. He's written books. He has a couple YouTube videos with thousands and thousands of viewers. And he contends there's this worldwide conspiracy that people like Peyton Manning and others are in on the fix, and that football, since it is considered entertainment, is not subject to getting in trouble if there is a fix. Perhaps like the World Wrestling Federation. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I did some investigating as best I could online, and I did see that there were a few things I found that, for example, there's a 1964 bribery act that I think the NFL would fall under, and again, fraud is a very broad definition, but I would be pretty sure that if they were fixing games, people could be fined, go to jail, both, because at the very least it's fraud. But I'm not an expert, and so we'll leave that aside for a second, whether it's legal or not. But I want to look at these three levels that I've mentioned, and in my opinion, the likelihood that cheating could happen on that level. The first level, yeah, I think players, coaches, teams get calls for whatever reason. And do I think that's happening in the playoffs this year, in particular with the Chiefs? I think it's certainly happening. Is it intentional? I mean, is it kind of an unconscious thing, a subconscious? Um, I'm not sure, but they're definitely getting calls. I don't think there's any question about it. Teams do get calls. I mean, is this an outlier? You can go back and say, certain teams got calls in past Super Bowls, but the Chiefs do seem to, including the Houston game, they do seem to be the beneficiary of getting calls. Second level, this wink wink, so to speak, that I'm calling it. Do I think that's happening? No. The third level, where there's blatant cheating, do I think that's happening? Absolutely not. I mean, these are educated guesses. I've mentioned there's three types of probability. There's theoretical, there's empirical, and there's intuitive, right? Intuitive is basically an educated guess. But if I had to take an educated guess, is there a league-wide conspiracy among referees and or commissioner where there is blatant cheating, maybe some of the players? I don't know, a million to one. I mean, it's just a huge. And why do I say that? Well, let's think about it. The Super Bowl, they draw 100 over 100 million viewers from the U.S. alone every year. They have great television ratings. Their memorabilia sales are tremendous. Most teams sell out every game. It's a multi-billion dollar industry. So, what is there to gain if you try to fix games? Well, you might say, well, okay, if you fix a game, then and let's just say you get an attractive team like the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You have attendance or you have viewership to gain. Well, I would say conversely, in 2018, I believe it was when the Rams upset the Saints, or they beat the Saints. I don't know if it was upset, maybe a slight upset on a major controversial non-pass interference call at the end of the game. I looked at the television ratings, and I believe it was 44%, one of the lowest ratings in league history. It was because largely it was a dud of a game. New England beat the Rams 13-3. But in New Orleans, the viewership had a 26 rating. So just a little more than half the national average. So they were not pleased. They tuned out. So, people that running this, people like Roger Goodell and others, they're smart people. Okay. So you could say on one hand, yeah, but John, human greed knows no boundaries. Well, my counter to that is when you are at the top, right? I mean, you're this multi-billion dollar industry. It's a negligible gain at most, right? I mean, how many more viewers are you going to get? Um, and it's a major risk. So I'm going to make an analogy. So let's just say somebody offers you $1 million. Say, here, it's yours to take. But I'm going to give you a proposition. We can flip a coin and you can risk losing that $1 million. Or if you win $1,000. So you'd walk away with 1 million, $1,000. Nobody would take that, no matter how greedy they are. At least I'm pretty sure. Well, there might be some idiots that take that, but no. Why? Because the gain is not worth the risk. So I can't prove this, but I'm quite sure that Roger Goodell is telling the truth as he has explained himself the last week. He said, no, there is no conspiracy for the Chiefs to win. Now, let's look at some empirical evidence, if we may. You say, well, I do think they maybe make games closer or put teams in. Well, let's look at Super Bowl history. I looked at the last 14 years, and the reason I picked 14 years is because all of those games had a 5 point spread or less. So they were expected to be close games. And of those 14, six had a spread of 10 or more. 10 or more, I arbitrarily picked that, figuring, well, it was not a one score game. So, it might not have been of the biggest interest to fans. And I picked a recent season, actually the 2021 season. I happen to have that data handy. And there were about 250 games that had a spread of 5 points or less, and about 100 had a 10-point margin or more. That's 40%. Well, six out of 14 had a spread of 10 or more. That's 42%. So as far as the spreads go, it's pretty much the norm. Okay. Again, if you're going to fix Super Bowls, and I'm just focused on the Super Bowl, um, the games haven't been any closer than they would have been. Now, I was actually trying to err on the side of the conspiracy theorists by only picking the last 14 games. If you go back, interestingly, I don't know if many of you realize this, the NFC won 13 straight Super Bowls from Super Bowl, I believe it was 19 to Super Bowl 31. The average margin of victory was a whopping 20 plus points. It was like 20.7 points where the NFC won those games. Four of the games were by 30 or more points. So if they are fixing games today, they sure weren't back in the day. So some of you might be thinking again, yeah, but John, we're not talking about past Super Bowls. We're talking about the Chiefs. Well, okay. And again, I do not deny there have been, I'm rooting for the Eagles. I've rooted against the Chiefs actually during the playoffs. So I have no reason to support them. I mean, I like Andy Reid. I actually kind of like Mahomes. But they are getting the benefit of calls. But my point is to say that whether you look at it empirically, which is a small data set, or just logically, there is no conspiracy to fix games. Now, or at least to fix these games with the Chiefs. Now, that all said, I do want to make a comment on the Super Bowl itself. So, my model has the Eagles as a clear 3 point favorite. Um, this is in looking at several metrics. One metric, which I think sometimes gets downplayed, is just points scored and points given up. Football Outsiders did a study many years ago where I think they called it something like stomps and guts. And the stomp means when you stomp a team, and guts mean when you gut out, when you gut your way to win, meaning a close win. The Eagles have won, I believe it's 6 games this year by 14 or more points. I think the Chiefs have won two. I don't think the Chiefs have won any games by 20 points or more. The Eagles have won, I believe it's 4 games by 20 points or more. And they're just a better team. They have probably the league's best offensive line. They clearly have a better offense. Mahomes actually, I'm not sure he's even the best quarterback in football today. He has thrown, I believe it's 25 interceptions over the last 2 years, which I think Baker Mayfield is the only one with more. He's now had 5 years of double-digit interceptions. He's 29 years old. Aaron Rodgers, on the other hand, up through age 38, had 2 years of 10 plus interceptions. I'm not saying that Rodgers is better than him. Mahomes is one of the all-time greats already. I'm just not sure he's the god that everybody makes him out to be. But anyway, and I mention that only because of people will cite intangibles and say, yeah, but come crunch time, Mahomes is the guy. And, and my response to all that is that they're small sample sizes. You could let's say that you simulate football season 50 times, okay? And so it's on on a computer, right? So there's no human emotion there, right? You can look back, and I'm quite sure you're going to find that there are some players that step up in big games, right? It's kind of the law of averages. But you could look at those simulations, and let's just say whoever it is. It could be Mahomes, it could be Allen, it could be kind of an unknown or a relatively unknown. It might be Daniel Jones for all we know. And for whatever, they eke their way into two Super Bowls, and he has two stuff. You're going to say that are you going to say that Daniel Jones stepped up in that crunch time? No. Why? Because it was a simulated game. There's no human emotions. There's no stepping up. Now you might say, well, yeah, but here, when we play the game, there are human emotions. But my point is the nature of statistics and variability. You are invariably going to find that just through happenstance, there are going to be quarterbacks and players that they're going to look like they stepped up just because somebody has to look like they stepped up. But you're still dealing with very small sample sizes. The Chiefs to this date have still only been in 4 Super Bowls. And I would argue that in the first Super Bowl, Mahomes did not look good. He had there was a busted play, as I recall, in the third quarter. The receiver was wide open, and he just was not impressive. They did win, and of course, everybody wants to, yeah, but they found a way to win. But how did they win? Was it because of Mahomes? I'm not saying he had a bad game, but he wasn't extra special. The next year, or I think 2 years after, whatever it was, I think it was the next year, they got blown up by Tampa. He sure didn't look that game. So that's two of the four games. Um, so anyway, my point is these are small sample sizes. Do they come through in the clutch? I I don't know. And my point is, can you put credence in that? There are some people that want to, let's just say the Eagles are 3 points better. Do you shift that to saying it's a pick 'em game because of the intangibles of Mahomes? I say that's just way too big a reach. And if you're going to look at an intangible, I would look at an intangible where I think the Eagles are hungrier. I've seen at least one Eagle player interview. They said, they are on this trip for business. They are, in fact, they're trying not to have fun as opposed to 2 years ago. So I think they're taking this more seriously. Are the Chiefs taking it serious? Yeah. Are they taking it as serious? Maybe not. Yeah, they want to go for history, but it's also human nature to let down after, a couple Super Bowl wins. I think we even saw that during the regular season. They were 11-0 in one score games. You can say, yeah, but that was the regular season, and they knew they would find a way to win. No, no, no team is that good where they know they're going to find a way to win. Against Houston, where they got some calls, I believe they had 212 total yards. Houston had, I think, over 350. This is that's not reflective of a team that's playing like they really want to win. So, if anything, those intangibles I think go the Eagles' way. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to call for a 3 point, I'll say 26-23 Eagles victory. I think there's equity on the Eagles. They're actually getting a point and a half if you would choose to indulge a little bit. And that is all I have. But I would say also enjoy the game. It's not fixed, and go Eagles. Thank you for tuning into Statistics Tell a Story, and I will see you next time on the channel. Thank you.